You're listening to the Chronicles of Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to another live edition of the Chronicles of Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, brought to you by 90 Min. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this video, podcast, whatever you want to call it, we're going to be discussing Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's current form. Is it time for Mikel Arteta to drop Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang from the starting 11? Will it do him good? Will it do the team good? What needs to change to get Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang firing again? Because we've been so heavily reliant on his goals in the last couple of seasons, and unfortunately for us, they've just completely dried up. Now, we're going to get into it a little bit deeper during this program. We're going to discuss whether it's Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang just not doing his job, not producing the outputs that we're used to. Is it because Arsenal as a team are lacking creativity? Is that the problem? Is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang suffering from the fact that Arsenal as a unit just simply do not create enough chances, do not get him in the right positions? What is it? Let me know your thoughts in the chat and I'll be sharing mine over the next 15-20 minutes or so. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's discuss Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's season so far. He's got just 2 goals in the Premier League, 1 assist, and that's from 11 games. Now, of course, those goals came on the opening day at Fulham. Lovely counter-attacking move from Arsenal. Comfortable 3-0 win at Craven Cottage. And everything seemed rosy, having just won the FA Cup. We went into the game against West Ham United, where we squeezed a narrow win, 2-1 that day at the Emirates Stadium. Aubameyang got an assist that day. But then in between that game, with trips to Liverpool, Manchester City, home defeats at the hands of Leicester City, obviously a narrow win at home to Sheffield United, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang didn't contribute anything. He then popped up at Old Trafford in a game where probably I thought was one of the team's overall better performances so far this season. He scored from the penalty spot, but that means that despite putting that goal in at Old Trafford, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has not scored from open play since the opening day of the season. Now, that is a big worry. That is a big concern. Why is that the case now? This is the golden question, isn't it? I think Arsenal as a team clearly are not creating enough. You have to take that into consideration when judging and assessing Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's performances, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's outputs. Could you argue that a world-class striker or a top-class striker, someone who's earning what Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is earning now, who has been so influential in the last few years, has to be able to create his own opportunities at times as well? Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. But you only need to look at the Premier League table to understand that actually this is a much deeper problem than Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. All you need to do is look at the goals scored column on the current Premier League table, and you will find that only Burnley, West Bromwich Albion and Sheffield United, the current bottom 3, have scored less goals in the Premier League this season than Arsenal. Fulham have scored more goals in the Premier League this season than Arsenal. That puts it into context as to how bad we've been creatively, how much we're lacking in that department. Now, what's the reason for that? Is it the midfield? Is it the wingers? Is it the forwards not getting in the right positions? I think it's a combination of things, and that's why this problem is so difficult to solve. Leaving Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang out of the side, I don't think would necessarily be the worst thing in the world, but you've got to think about how that will be taken by Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And Mikel Arteta already has, I don't want to say fallen out, but he's burnt bridges with some of the players already at the club. You can tell that some of his decisions have been met with raised eyebrows, certainly by the fan base. And then so you have to assume that within the camp, there's been a few sort of question marks around some of the things he's done as well. And I just feel like if he was to leave Aubameyang out, it would be very easy for Aubameyang to sulk. Would we see Mesut Ozil taking the opportunity to say to Aubameyang, look, you're clearly not the issue, but he's made you the issue by leaving you out of the side? Could it cause unrest in the squad? Would the rest of the squad look at Mikel Arteta and think, we need a goal, Why the hell would you leave our most clinical forward out? Now, yes, this season hasn't gone the way he would have liked. I'm completely aware of that. I completely understand that. But, it's a massive, massive worry. We've spoken about it the last couple of seasons. Where would we be without Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's goals? And now we're seeing it. We're 15th in the Premier League table. And we could have gone 16th last night had Brighton beaten Southampton. So there is a major, major concern here. What do we do to get him firing again? What do we do to get the Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang back that has been key to the relative success that we've had over the last couple of seasons in terms of, winning the FA Cup that we did, finishing in more respectable league positions than the one we finished in last season, etc. It's a really, really tough one. I think that creatively we're lacking in all areas of the pitch. I think at the moment we're being limited to creating things in the wide areas, and our fullbacks have been the main kind of outlets for that. The players getting into those positions, the players trying to make things happen, and quite frankly, they've not been good enough when it's come to the final delivery. In particular, Hector Bellerin's not been good enough in that department. He gets forward an awful lot. He gets into really good positions. Some will say that that's not what he should be doing. Defending should come first. I read Tony Adams sort of making that point following the North London derby. But ultimately, what Hector Bellerin does in terms of bombing forward, that's an instruction from Mikel Arteta. He's following what his coach is instructing him to do. He's doing it. He's getting into the positions. But the final ball has to be better. Nobody else can do anything about that. Bellerin has to do better there. We've seen some decent deliveries coming from Tierney from the left-hand side, but the strikers have not been able to take the opportunities. The midfield, I think we all understand that the midfield is a massive, massive issue. There's no vertical passing. We don't play the ball forward. It's sideways, backwards. We saw an interesting stat after the North London derby that Arsenal needed 55 passes to get an attempt off at goal. That's far too many. And it's a serious, serious problem. So the point I'm trying to make is that the lack of creativity in this Arsenal side is a systemic issue. It is a team-wide issue rather than it just being down to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Do I think Aubameyang could do more, though? Absolutely. I think Aubameyang could do a lot more. I think Aubameyang, he has the ability to get the ball and run at people, or you'd think he does with the pace and the power that he has. But he just lacks that little bit of guile, that little bit of creativity, that little bit of cuteness in his play to beat players. He's got the pace to do it, but if teams camp deep, where are you running? You're not running in behind. He's not playing off the shoulder as much as he was doing when playing on that left-hand side. He's also not arriving late anymore. He's not getting closer to the centre forward. When he plays as the centre forward, nobody gets closer to him. So there are so many issues here. And I think anybody who has watched Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang since he joined Arsenal will have known about the player's limitations. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I don't mean that in a horrible way. It's not me sitting here saying that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's not a good player or anything like that, because we know that when provided with the ammunition, he will score. He's proven that time and time again. And the fact that since joining Arsenal Football Club, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has scored 74 goals, I should say, in 122 appearances, that confirms that if you give him the service, he will convert. The issue is he's not getting that service at the moment. So, on the one hand, you could sit there and you could point the finger at him and you can say, he's not doing enough individually. On the other hand, though, when you look at the stats, you look at the Premier League table and you see that only the bottom three have scored less goals than us, then you have to understand that this is a wider problem. Dropping Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, I think, is risky, not because I think we're going to lose a game or, it's going to have that much of a detrimental effect, because given his current form, he's not doing anything anyway. So it's not that. For me, it's the implications of leaving him out of the side. What does that do for the team morale? What does that do for him personally? What does it do with for his relationship with Mikel Arteta? We know that Arteta was key in persuading Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to stay at the Emirates Stadium. key in persuading him to sign that new contract. People will turn around and say now that it was a mistake giving Aubameyang that contract. It was a mistake giving him such a hefty sum. But the reality is that at the time, every single one of us wanted him to sign it. We were all saying it. That would be our biggest transfer business this summer. So let's not be flip-flops. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. There's still a top goal scorer in Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but Mikel Arteta has to find a way of getting more out of him right now. Because the longer this goes on and the worse the situation becomes, the more pressure starts to come on the manager, and he's starting to get questioned about other things as well, other decisions that he's made that could be perhaps directly or indirectly contributing to the situation we currently find ourselves in. And you know who I'm talking about when I say that. So where does Mikel go from here? It's a difficult one. But me personally, dropping Aubameyang, don't see what that does for you, to be honest. I've seen some people suggesting Lacazette should play as the central striker now, and that Aubameyang should be left out. Me personally, it's not the way I would approach it. I don't think it'll be helpful. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the chat. Let's have a quick look at some of you guys' comments before we drop off. Omar says, I said in the comments on the preview on here that I would have dropped him for the game. I was probably the only one who said that as well. He needs to be retaken out of the firing line for him to regain his hunger and confidence. Graham disagrees. He says, Omar, I don't believe he'll regain anything by not playing. Arteta needs to get him into the game with smart tactics, and Oba needs to respond as well. These two created it. Now make them fix it. Yeah, agreed. I agree with Graham on that. I think that it's the manager's responsibility to get more out of the player. Now, we can say that the player's out of form, and that's absolutely true, and that maybe his commitment levels are, not quite where they need to be. His attitude and the way he carries himself around the pitch has definitely raised question marks. There's no doubt about that. But ultimately, you've persuaded this guy to stay at the club. You've told him about your project. You've given him assurances that this is going to happen, that's going to happen. In order to persuade him to sign, now as the manager, it's your responsibility to find a way of playing that gets the maximum out of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, because he's our most potent goal scorer. The last few seasons have proven that. Mohamed Adam says he isn't the right kind of striker to play centre forward. He needs a centre forward with a presence next to him. I don't disagree with that. I think that's one thing we're seriously lacking in our striking line. We don't have a presence, a forward who's going to bring other people into the game, a forward who commands the attention of the centre backs, takes away, distracts people. We don't have any of that. And I know it's easy to sit here now when Olivier Giroud is firing on all cylinders for Chelsea and say we made a mistake selling him. I don't necessarily think we made a mistake getting rid of him, because the goals that Aubameyang has scored since he came, who ultimately is the signing that forced Giroud to leave, have more than been worth it. It's just that now he's going for a difficult patch. The team are going for a difficult patch. But as I said right at the top of the programme, Aubameyang could do more, in my opinion. But the reality is that the team as a unit are struggling to contribute, struggling to create, struggling to make things happen. We're not talking about an Arsenal side here who are creating chance after chance after chance, and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is not taking those chances. He's not even getting them. Mohamed says he's not physical, tricky enough to play in this team. We severely need different types of players. I don't disagree with that. Ogachukwu says, what do you think is the problem with Aubameyang? I, for one, think the entire team is lacking confidence at the moment, and we need to get rid of some of them as well. Arteta isn't the issue. The board should back the team. Look, I think, if we want to have a discussion about the board, about the ownership of the club, I think it's a fair discussion to have at certain points. But the club have backed... They've backed Arsenal, in recent years. They've spent money. Has the money been spent right? Maybe not, but that's not Stan Kroenke's fault. Stan Kroenke hands over the money. He doesn't claim to be a footballing expert. He hands over the money, and Arsenal do with it what they please. And they've, this summer they brought in Gabriel, they brought in Partey. I thought they were positive signings. Danny Ceballos came back. We were a little bit short in midfield, so I think that was a decent signing. I think actually Ceballos in the second half against Spurs was probably one of our better players. So lots to think about, but I'm not really sure pointing the fingers at the owners is the right thing right now. Stu says Bellerin and Xhaka have dragged Arsenal from UCL to Europa to a relegation scrap. Two egotists ship them out. Look, I totally agree that in the longer term, if you want to progress this team, you need to be upgrading on those two players. I've always said that about Granit Xhaka. Where I've defended him is, if you're going to play in the way that we tried to play at Spurs at the weekend, where you want to press them, you want to be aggressive, then he can't play. He didn't play at Old Trafford, and we were able to implement that playing style and come away with a really good result. But we all know Granit Xhaka's limitations. So if the manager is selecting Granit Xhaka and then asking him to play in a way that doesn't work, something that we all know doesn't work, then you have to put that on the manager. What's Granit Xhaka supposed to say? Sorry, boss, I don't want to play this week because I don't think what the tactics you've set out necessarily suit me. So I'll just sit this one out and give Mohamed a run out. No, it doesn't work like that. As for Bellerin, offers us something going forward in terms of the runs he makes, but the end product isn't there. And defensively, he's been found wanted time and time again. So I understand why people are starting to get frustrated about that. Norwegian Gooner says we'd be relegated last year if not for Oba. I don't think we were that bad last year, but it would have been our position would have been significantly different if he wasn't in the side, of course. Russ says Oba needs to be dropped ASAP. Sorry. Yeah, you're not the only one that thinks that. Pramod says Oba doesn't trust the process. For me, that's what is the problem. He's understanding his manager is clueless. What else have we got here? Red Gilly says, Harry, if Arteta is going to leave players out, he needs to leave Bellerin, Xhaka, Holding and Willian out first. Then maybe Oba will get more chances. Yeah, as I keep saying, there are issues throughout the team. Jack the Ripper agrees with me. There are lots of issues. Unfortunately, hope you and the people in the chat are well, Harry. Yep, all good, mate. Thank you. What else have we got here? Russ Morgan says, why has Oba dropped off a cliff when he was playing under the same manager and players after lockdown last season? Perhaps it's a confidence issue. I'm not really sure. And that's what makes this so baffling. And that's what makes this so difficult for Mikel Arteta, because there is no one clear issue that is causing Arsenal to struggle. It's a number of things. It's a multitude of things. And that's why it's so hard to fix at the moment. I genuinely believe that. What else have we got here? Just having a look at some of your comments. Marble Hall says, I don't agree, Harry. KSC allows them to sign bad players and doesn't correct them. How are KSC going to correct them, though, if they don't have a clue about football? I don't know about you, but I'd rather Edu was signing our players than Stan Kroenke, who probably has watched a handful of football games in his life. I don't know how they're supposed to correct it other than throwing more money at it. And they have been throwing money at it, despite us not even being in the Champions League. So, yeah, it's a hard one. Dan DeLuca, regular on the social club. My word, that is a comment and a half. He says, Aubameyang's goal drought is a false stat in a way. The pressure has been unduly created by throwing him left wing for large spells in the early part of the season. As you mentioned, creativity has been non-existent and he's played up top for 2 games. So the games he had little chance of ever scoring in have just added to the total. Mistake was keeping him on a huge contract, then not building the team around him. He should be up front and everything channeled around getting him the ball quickly. Yeah, you make some great points. I would slightly counter that with the fact that Aubameyang has scored goals from the left. So him playing from the left, I don't necessarily think is that much of an issue, and not as much of an issue as some people would make it out to be. But yeah, the key point is that he's a top goal scorer. He's proven that. I'm not going to sit and entertain arguments that say he's not, because the facts prove it. But now we need to find, we've kept him. We went out on a limb. We gave him that big contract. And that should have been with the caveat of, right, now we've got to find a way of building around him and getting the best out of him. He is our key man. Let's get the best out of our key player. And we're not doing that at the moment. We're struggling for a number of reasons, as I keep saying. But is there an overreaction to his goal drought? Maybe slightly, but it's because he's a victim, I guess, of the high standards that he himself has set. So we're going to have to wait and see how this develops. But fingers crossed he gets back to scoring sooner rather than later, because as we've said it in previous seasons, where would we be without Aubameyang's goals? Well, now we're seeing exactly where we'll be without Aubameyang's goals, and that is languishing in the bottom half of the Premier League table. It's really, really not good enough. So in conclusion, I would not drop Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang because I don't see what good it will bring. I think it will just cause a fictitious relationship between Aubameyang and Mikel Arteta, something that we don't need at the club at the moment. But I do think that Mikel Arteta has to think long and hard about how he gets the best out of Aubameyang. And if it means centering our game around him, then that is the way you do it. So be it. And if it means dropping off or compromising on some of the other values or the other tactical things that he wants to implement, then so be it, because we need to get Aubameyang firing again. Because as we've seen, I keep saying it, he has been so key to our success. And without him, we are lost. We simply do not score goals. So that's Mikel's biggest task at the moment for me. He's got to find a way of getting the best out of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang again. And hopefully he does that in time for Sunday's game against Burnley. That dreaded 7:15 Sunday night kickoff, a kickoff time, which has seen us lose all 3 games in which we've played in it. So I'm not looking forward to that at all. But yeah. Cheers. Right, that brings us to the end of this live edition of the podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you smash that like button. In fact, I'm going to have a look and see how many likes we have currently got from you guys watching us. You can see there's over 100 watching across the multiple platforms. We've only got 17 likes, guys. Come on. Make sure you hit that like button. It really, really does help. It is very much appreciated. If you prefer to listen to this on audio, you can find it on all the major podcast stores, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, all the usual places. You can find the Chronicles of a Gooner. So be sure to check it out if you prefer to take in the content whilst walking or doing something else. That's another alternative way of doing it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video if you haven't. Follow 90 Min. It's this side. Here we go. There it is. Follow 90 Min as well. Keep your eyes peeled for the Welcome to World Class series, which starts today, I believe. I had a great couple of days last week filming that. So, yeah, great fun. Check that out too. We'll be back very, very soon with more. Until then, take care. Cheers.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.